Here we have our list of categories. If I go ahead and try and add a new category and just hit submit without filling in any of the fields, the category will be created, as you'll see down here with 2 empty fields. We need to add form validation in order to fix this situation. So if we go back over to new category, we have 2 fields that we need to make sure have validation rules on it. Let's go over to NetBeans in our catalog project, and you'll see that I have added the model attribute validate and have already included the 2 fields that we would like to validate. So just to recap the validate array, it's an associated array with a key value pair, where the key is the field name in the database and the value is the validation rule. So in this case, we've already set up the name field and the length underscore type field. We just need to set the validation rule as the corresponding key value pair. So for name, we want to make sure that it's not empty, and we'll use the not empty validation rule. For length type, we'll use the exact same rule, not empty. Now if we go over to our website, here's our form field. If I hit refresh, you'll see that the asterisk has now been added to each of the field names. And if I try and submit, I'm prompted to fill out the 2 fields. Not empty will also cover the space in case someone tries to just enter a space into each of the fields. So if I hit submit and each of those fields have spaces in it, it will do a server-side check on the field data, and it comes back with an error saying that the field cannot be left blank. So now we can go ahead and enter in a new category name and hit submit. You'll see our new category here at the bottom. Now the validation also works for the edit, so I'm going to edit our empty fields here, and I'm just going to hit submit. Even though these empty fields are currently in our database, it is still registering that it's not valid data that is inside these fields, and that we would need to provide valid data. For this item, we're just going to go ahead and delete it. Let's go over to our items page. We'll just click on the add item, and you'll see our form here. The first 4 fields are the fields that we would like to validate. Our description can be optional. I've already set up the shell of the validate variable in my item model. Let's go ahead and open that. Here's my validate variable and the fields that we would like to validate. We want to make sure that we validate the category underscore ID field, the title field, the year field, and the length field. So for our category underscore ID, this is an actual foreign key which references the categories table. In this case, it will always be an integer. We want to validate it with the validation rule of numeric. For our title, we want to make sure that it's not empty. So we'll use the not empty validation rule. Now our year is a little bit more complex. We've added an associated array to our year field. Each field that references an associated array must have the rule key. So in this case, our rule will then reference a validation rule. We only want integers for our year. We want to reference the numeric validation rule. Now I've provided a detailed message saying, please enter a 4-digit year. The length field will also be an integer, so we'll use our numeric validation rule. Let's go ahead and test out our validation on our form. I'm going to hit refresh, and you'll see that the asterisks have now been added to the labels of each of the fields, except for description, where our description is optional. Our category drop-down list does not have an empty field, so this will always pass our validation. But let's go ahead and submit the form with these 3 being empty. You'll see that these 3 fields are highlighted in red, indicating that they don't meet the validation rules. Let's go ahead and enter in some data. Now I'm going to go ahead and click Save Item again. It is still indicating that our year field and our length field need to have valid data. Now each of these are supposed to be an integer. I'm going to go ahead and enter in some non-integer values. And the same thing for our length. Now I'm going to go ahead and save the item. You'll notice that these validation errors look a little different from our former submission. This is because the submission actually went to the server side and returned back indicating that the fields did not meet the proper validation rules. Now if I enter in an integer for each of these fields, the item will be created. And an integer for length. And you'll see our newly created item. Let's go back and look at our item model validation. You'll see that I've kept it pretty simple for this particular validation example. You can see that there's other validation rules that definitely can be added to these 4 fields. For example, the year we're just checking a numeric value. I could enter in a 1, a 0, or a million, and this validation would ring true. CakePHP's validation can get even more detailed to cover multiple validation rules per field. I'm not going to cover those multiple validation rules. You can find more information on data validation from the CakePHP website at the following link.